Jeremy who started this business, or Scott, or Frank, or anybody, Jim, who's started their own business in the past, you start with humble beginnings. And Mel is no exception. He started from humble beginnings. He was a chicken farmer in Indiana.
Great one.
And he went to the library as a boy, and he came across a book called The Treasure Hunter's Guide. And he got the bug. And his herald and his calling was, I'm gonna go look for some treasure. Because there was a rumor that there was some Spanish galleon treasure that went down off the coast of Florida in 1622, and it was rumored to never be found. So he set off with his young family, sold the chickens, made his way to Key West, and started a dive shop. There's nothing to do with this right now. And in that dive shop, he started hanging out at the gin joints and bars and dive shops in Key West to try to get recruits to say, hey, after this big treasure, who's game? Some people said he was nuts. Some people asked what his background was. How could you possibly be a treasure hunter? What do you know about it? Well, I sold used cars and I sold chickens. But I got a dream. And he started every day with a simple mantra. Today's the day. Today's the day we strike it rich. And today's the day we hit the motherlode. And it was just him and his wife and his 2 sons. And he would do this every day. He'd go out in a little skiff, look at these maps that were kind of hand-drawn from memory from the wreckage of the Etosha, which went down in September of 1622 off the coast of the Keys and Havana. And he had these maps that were written by the slaves, the 4 slaves of the 400 people that survived the shipwreck to go on. That's it. Today's the day we strike it rich, today's the day we hit the motherlode. And he did that over and over and over again. Wouldn't you know it, there's a couple of folks who were desperate, dumb, feeling lucky enough to say, hey, I want to join Mel's journey. And he got a bigger boat. Bless you, a bigger boat. And lo and behold, he found something. After about a year, this is 1970, he began his journey. He found something. He found, I'll pass this around. This is a musket ball, one musket ball, in one area off the coast of the Keys. And it's not gold, it's not silver. I mean, it's a steel ball that they use, you know, the Spanish soldiers to load their weapons. And they had this little triangle. They would go to Cartagena, Colombia, load up all the gold and jewels and precious metals that they got from pillaging, you know, the South Americans there. Load it up, go to Havana, load up troops, people, and then head on to Spain to supply the war effort that they had in Europe. That was their plan, over and over and over again. Today's the day we strike it rich, today's the day we hit the motherlode. Found a musket ball, renewed energy. Now people are interested. So you find one musket ball, because these were big Spanish galleons of soldiers and munitions, let alone gold. There must be more. And they found a few trinkets here and there. And the folks that originally joined them got a little impatient because they didn't find the level of treasure that they thought they would. And so they said, what do you know? You just got lucky. I'm on to other things. But those that stayed believed in the mantra, today's the day we strike it rich, today's the day we hit the motherlode. In 73, 1974, 1975. Now there were 2 ships that went down off the coast of the Keys in 1622. One was the Etosha, and the other one was the Santa Margarita. And the Santa Margarita was the smaller of the boats, but still, in 1980 dollars, was still very lucrative. But the big mother was the Etosha, and that's what they were after. 1974, a couple of trinkets here and there, people come and go. 1975, today's the day, today's the strike it rich, today's the day we hit the motherlode. 1976, terrible accident. He loses his son and his daughter-in-law and a diver. And at this point, they really haven't made a lot of money after 6 years of searching from these feudal maps that all I know could be rumors. Maybe it was just a musket ball or 2 that was, you know, plunked over the side of the boat in that high traffic area in the 17th century. Who knows? But losing his family, now people are saying, listen, Mel, you got to give it up. You were pretty good at selling used cars. There's an easier way to make a buck. You sure you want to do this? The people that were with Mel we're also questioning, hey, listen, is this guy really going to take us to the promised land? Are we really going to do all that Mel says we're going to do? Because I really don't see it sometimes. It's tough to see. But Mel kept going. Today's the day, today's started rich, today's going to come up with. Until finally, 1980, they hit the wreckage of the Santa Margarita. And they get $25 million in there. But that's not the end of the story. Because you get $25 million treasure after searching for that long. You've reached a milestone, you've reached a level that people say, wow, that is incredible. It's enough to accomplish for anybody. But he says, but it's not the Etosha. It's not the other one. I gotta keep going. Now those that joined him early on said, hey Mel, I'm tapping out, popping smoke. This is what I want to do. I'm gonna take my winnings and I'm gonna leave. Thank you very much. I did enough. You did enough. Mel's like, it's not the goal. The goal is the Etosha. So new crew comes in. Hey, I'm game. You guys actually know what you're doing. I want a piece of that. And so they did. Today's the day, 1981, 1982, 1983. Finally, July 24th, 1985, his son Dirk radios up from the bottom saying, Pop, put away the charts, we hit the mother. They found the cannon for the Etosha. And when they found the cannon and the Etosha, they found other jewels, and it was only a matter of time, day after day and week after week, where they realized that they started salvaging the ship, that they didn't just have $20 million, they didn't just have $30 million, they just didn't have $40 million. They didn't find 100, they didn't find 103, 104, they didn't find 200, they didn't find 300. They didn't find 340, 341, 344, they didn't find 400. They found $450 million worth of treasure at the bottom of the sea on the Etosha, which ironically today they claim is only 60% found. So there's still a tremendous amount that's left, but that's not the end of the story. So pass that around a little bit. That is a coin from the Etosha that was minted. And what's interesting about this particular coin is that one of the companies, I think that Frank put on there, that I had with a buddy of mine got started, was a security company. If you ever saw the movie Catch Me If You Can with Frank Abagnale, right, and Leonardo DiCaprio? So Frank was my third partner. We had another buddy of mine named Cory, and then Frank. So we always said we were looking for a Maury, right? Cory, and Maury. But in that, that buddy of mine was on vacation in Hawaii, and he went to a dive shop, just meandering in the shop, and he sees a collection of nautical coins such as this. And as soon as he sees it, he sees where it's from, the Etosha, and he starts asking questions about it. And immediately the shop owner says, what do you know about the Etosha? And Ori tells him a couple of things that I just told you. And he gets in a hushed tone. He turns the sign from open to close, locks the door, pulls the curtains, and he pulls up a piece of the Etosha. And it's this piece right here. Now Ori, much like Frank or Jeremy or Scott or any of the folks that I've known for a while, when you see something like this, when you have a friend of yours that's telling a story like this for year after year after year, you find a token of that, you have no choice except to buy that particular token. So I take pleasure in the fact that that was a couple grand out of his pocket that he had to buy. But the story is hey Bennett, what number, this is a lot number for an auction, what lot number is on that coin in red?
41.
41. What was the name of the company that I started with my buddy Ori and Frank? The 41st Parameter. So there's this tissue, and I know this group here particularly, because since it's founding, you believe in, miracles, right? Two people in the world, people who don't believe in miracles, or people who believe in miracles happening every time. And that's the universe saying, at this early stage of founding this company, that's the company I needed to be at. This was 3 months in. We had no money, we had no sales, right? We had thin walls sharing with another business, but sometimes you just have to believe today's the day we start getting rich, today's we hit the money low. And you look for signs like that, but that's not the end of the story. Because what you also see and we've heard, is that the ship, the Etosha, when it was found, there was a spear from a spear gun lodged in the remnant wood of the, what's the front right? Who's the boat person? Bow, stern, starboard, whatever it is. The front right of the boat. Now, this was a spear from a spearfishing gun, which is about $80. Now, if you dropped an $80 bill, you'd probably look for it. And so no one knows how that got there. It wasn't there too long because it wasn't rusted or it wasn't tarnished anyway. So the story that I like to think is there was a diver, because if you ever been to Key West, the water is as clear as can be, isn't it? I mean, you can look down and it's bath water. It's 50 feet and you can see the floor. How it took 350 years to find this boat, I'll never know in water like that. But the spear was lodged. And so there's probably a fisherman, right, swimming around and sees Shelby the game. Hey, I'm going to target that tuna. Maybe sell it to a tourist. Maybe a big marlin to mount on my wall. Take aim, I shoot, I miss Shelby, and boom, lodges right in the bow of a bigger fish. And maybe I'll look around for a couple of minutes, and I'm like, you know, it's just not worth it, because it's only $80, or it's $80. And so, when you look at, which I love, startups, right? My business today is I help raise money and sell companies in the world of tech, right? From Silicon Valley to Seattle to California, you never know where the calls come in. Everybody wants to start a company that gets to this size. Everybody wants to be at a company that gets to this size. And the game for 2020, where it really starts to kind of go down the runway and pull up, that's where the fun and the struggle and the hustle come in. And that's really where the sales impact really will make an impact. And that, as I've told Frank and Jim and Daryl several times that I've met with you guys, is that you look at the numbers and the trajectory. It is what you guys do in a year, right? And certainly we've seen this at Knowledge. I've seen this at many companies. What you've done in a year, you in a not too distant future will be doing in a quarter. It's not beyond that realm of possibility, because other businesses are doing it. You do not have the fabric, the connective tissue that you have. And so that's what I wanted to do, is just briefly go over a couple things on the sales side and just keep me honest on time here. This was kind of first perhaps in a series based off of getting everybody together at the proper time. But and with this stuff, you know, it's always tough with a disparate group and with so many different experiences to know where to start. And so I always like to start from kind of the Vince Lombardi way, as this is a football, right? Or the John Wooden way, you know, coaching USL, this is how you tie your shoes. This is how you put your socks on. And that's why I think to start with Mel's story about today's the day, today's the strike rest stage when we hit the mother load, knowing that there's a couple of chicken farmers back there, there's one over here too, right, who have the dream to suit for the Etosha. Now, what is the Etosha? I think the Etosha, as we're refining that message, but the good and the grace that you can bring to the three segments of companies that we've identified, right? The schools and the churches and the elder care facilities is a spectacular mission. And it's a real niche mission. But as I give advice to entrepreneurs and startups all the time, there's a phrase, the riches are in the niches. And the more specialized your story is, the more it's simple to communicate. And the more people will rally around it because they can understand it. Versus, Jared, how many MSPs are there in the country? Thousands. How many in Phoenix, Frank?
Thousands.
Yeah, hundreds.
Right. So, I mean, we could probably divide up this group and give it a week, and it could be 3 or 4 different MSPs.
One knocked on the door this morning, ironically. I promise. Swear to God.
We need a tagline for the VIA then, so.
Yeah.
We are an MSP, yeah.
That's right, keep them mystery. So, so as we talk with folks, one of the things that we had talked about last week with Jim and Frank and Daryl was that you talk with so many folks. right? Who had the number of talking to most folks last year?
Jordan.
Jordan, right? So, and how many folks? 2,500?
It was just me for a long time.
2,500. And how many different folks does that 2,500 make up? Maybe
Four.
Love you too, bro. Probably a few hundred.
a few hundred, yeah. And so I know a lot of us, when we get into sales, there's different evolutions of sales. Evolution number one is what's called a commercial visitor. It's called this is the Beverage Institute of Professional Sales. Evolution number one is called a commercial visitor, which is someone who finds themselves in sales by accident. They see sales as living on the fringe of society. They see sales as a zero-sum game. The only way I can win is if somebody loses. And that's not being disparaging or pejorative. That's just how it is, right, Scott? You run into this. And that's okay, because of how some of us are wired, is that I don't want to be seen as something that's a burden. And that comes from our biophysiology from 10,000 years ago, when I had the village on the river, and I see Daryl coming down the river in his boat, and he looks different, right? He's got blue paint on, he's got a bone in his nose, right? I hear him talking to his buddies, and it's not the language I'm used to. And all my people, I'm getting, hey, come batten down the hatches, go in your, because there's strangers coming. And this stranger is not coming generally to give me a Bud Light. He's coming to take my stuff, take my tools, take my games, something. And so that biophysiology that we have of the stranger is inherently, right, bad, and it's evil, and it's unknown. And so as sales folks, when we have to say, hey, you got a cold call, that brings all those sweaty biophysiological elements back to where we are today in 2019. Because if I have to ask you for something, I'm going to come down and I'm going to ask Ashley for an axe. Because, I need an axe. You only have one axe. There's no Home Depot, right? So scarcity rules the day. That axe is my survival, it's my protection, it's my food, it's my wood, it's everything. And so when I'm asking you for something, it is a zero-sum game. And that's where a lot of folks come from a sales perspective, professional sales perspective. But we also know that in today's buying environment, people want to buy, they don't want to get sold. And that connotation of being in sales, oh, you sell stuff, means that I'm giving you something, selling you something, communicating to you something that you didn't necessarily want before I told you you needed it. And you feel that pressure, right? So with that, Rebecca, thanks. Diet Free soda? No? Okay. Well, this is a high-class joint. No diet chef. Okay. So,
You can sell that little ship piece and.
we'll get a lot of it. Thanks. Great. So, no worries. So this is the crux of what I teach and what we teach to young entrepreneurs who are raising money or starting a company. It's understanding your biophysiology. People want what they can't have. People chase what moves away from them. People only place value on that which is difficult to obtain. Okay. Priscilla, do you have any children yet? No. Do you have? Are you an aunt to any kids, or you're a babysitter or anything like that? How many? You ever been around any children?
Yeah.
Okay. So anyways, great. So Priscilla, if Priscilla, if you have a 4-year-old nephew, okay, there's 2 ways to approach that 4-year-old nephew, right? I can say, come here, right? And what do? They kind of hang on to their mother's leg a little tighter and tighter, right? Or I can say, hey Priscilla, come here, right? And that's the principle here. People want what they can't have. People chase what moves away from them. People only place value on that which is difficult to obtain. When you look at Christmas is coming up, and when Santa comes, right, kids can't sleep at night because of this anticipation, right? We've all been there, right? It's 2 o'clock, it's 2:02, it's 2:03. How can we translate that feeling into where the buyers, the prospects, the customers that we have also feel that same way, right? Well, I think another thing that I get asked a lot, right, Scott can vouch for this, is overcoming objections. We as salespeople, we hate overcoming objections. Yeah, but Yeah, but you don't understand. Yeah, but we're faster, we're better. And what if I told you that, and there is a sales methodology, there is a sales school, that if you do the right thing in the beginning, you never have to deal with any objections. First of all, there's a mindset that you should have, is that you're a psychologist on a Broadway play, so you're an actor. And number two, you're financially secure and you don't need the business. And so how do you act when you're financially secure and you don't need it? Particularly in a services business like ours, right? You have an opportunity where someone clearly needs on-demand printing. And there's a couple of different pathways that we can present that on-demand printing, or the physical security, or the password security, or with the content blocking. There's different ways I can sell that position at. And we're going to give you some screenplays and some scripts to present that, where you don't have to worry about overcoming an objection. Because I think that's a big block for a lot of us in sales, is I don't want to present anything that I don't know enough about, because I'm anxious about what they're going to say in return. Okay? So this comes to the biophysiology again, and this is how most people communicate an idea. If I'm going to go to a cold cognition, left brain, CFO, right, like Daryl, and I'm going to present him idea on a new CRM or a new tax structure to structure the business for Jeremy and the board, right? And I know my facts cold. I've had a CPA look at it, I had my tax attorney look at it, I had the state look at it, I've had the best consultants, and I'm going to present to Daryl the software. I'm probably going to talk about needs and speeds and risk and how long to install, all these software, boring, cold cognition, but that's what Daryl needs as a left brain thinker. And that's how we think, particularly in our MSP business, how most people will see the world, right? And it comes into the neocortex, your frontal brain. And it goes to the buyer's frontal brain. But what we want to do is we have to understand our biophysiology to go what's called the croc brain. Maybe you've heard this also called the monkey brain. It's the most primitive part of our brain, the Abdullah, what do you call it? Thank you. So, and that croc brain dealt with three simple things. When I see something new, novel, interesting, shiny, and that's where all the ideas initially come in through that area, and then come up through the midbrain, which is, what's your status? You know, how's Bennett dressed? Does he have a suit if I have a suit? Does, what's Bennett's title on his email signature? Is he at my level? Does he have any CCIE or CCNP, right? And that's where status alignment and your social structure comes in, is in the midbrain. And then finally, in the neocortex. So too often as sales folks, we read the product marketing documentation on all you're going to get for printing on demand, all you're going to get for physical security. And it's all the stuff that a left brain intelligent CFO like Daryl would want, or like Jeremy would want if he's CIO of a company. And what I'm advocating, what we advocate, is not necessarily to discount that, but it's out of sequence. There has to be a big idea, an emotional connection with four things. Bless you. Humor, intrigue, curiosity, and tension. And tension is the toughest one for non-professional sales folks to adopt. Tension doesn't mean I'm fronting you up and taking my stubby sausage finger and putting it in your chest, right? Tension means that I'm standing my ground. I know the value of my product. I know the price that we have. I know the people in this room who are behind me. Only you can hear me on the phone, but I know this organization. And that's the tension where I'm not going to buckle. And I may not know the answer to your question, but I have a ton of people who can help me with that. Humor, curiosity, intrigue, and tension, that's the novelty. That's the high contrast versus going in and saying, well, we have a new printing solution that does this, and it prints 50 pages a minute, and it costs X amount of dollars, etc. You may have folks who may subscribe to that and may buy that, may be interested in learning more about it, but they're not going to be captivated by it. And so every screenplay or every description of the new products that Frank will outline in 2020, that the initiatives, we have the what, but we also have to have the why behind it. What's the why? What's the grace? What's the mother lode behind it? And that's what will drive folks. Again, fast, novel, visual, high contrast, that's different. And you already have set this up as we get your soundbite of what your company is about in the narrow market, the narrow niche of what you're for. And once you know what you're for, everybody else, the other thousands in the country, the hundreds or thousands in Maricopa, they just kind of trickle away because they're not you. Versus trying to say, we're a managed service provider that focuses on X and Y and Z. That's not telling me anything about you. Not telling you about what your mission is. Okay? This stuff. Okay, so here's examples of story. Right? And language was originally communicated this. I mean, look at how Jeremy teaches. Jeremy and Keith Barker and Anthony Sequeira, Ted Hernandez, all of the greats, right, in tech training today, they don't just spew technical knowledge. Have you ever seen any of Jeremy's or Anthony's or Keith's or Doug's, right? All the Mount Rushmore of tech guys and gals that are out there today. They communicate in story form, in scenario form. And we have to arm you certainly with more of the success stories that are around so you have your narratives. You don't have to have hundreds of narratives, you just have to have like 3. That's it. And by arming you with these narratives, you're able to tell a story that is intriguing, that is high contrast, that is visual. For example, here's a story, and you know a little bit about. Looks like there's a woman in bed, and she's probably with her husband, and she's probably celebrating an anniversary, right, birthday or something like that. And you have the details of the story, but then let's create a little more intrigue. Now, somebody's entered the picture, and that's interesting, but now let's make it really compelling. Right? And so narrative sequencing, right? And you're with 2 of the best, and Frank and Jeremy here, that can tell you, right? That you roll out story brand, everybody, or just talked about it internally.
We talked about it.
Internally? So, right, think of Star Wars, Cosmogonic Cycle, Joseph Campbell, right? Outlaw Josie Wales, Clint Eastwood. These are folks, Marlon Brando. These are folks, storytellers that believe in the power of myth. And the power of myth, you've seen it from Cars to Star Wars to the Avengers to Love Boat episodes. Right? Probably dating myself, but that's where you see it. And you see it where there's a hero, and in this particular story, the hero is your prospect. The hero is your client. And they get a herald or a call by a guide. You could be that guy. Somebody else could be that guy. A security manifester doctrine could be that guy. And then there's usually a false guide. We're going to call that the competition or complacency. And they have to go into the underworld. And they have to find something, a princess, a MacGuffin, something to get. And they have to have a big, glorious, transformative fight. If you remember Cars, it was about 2 things. It was about not just achievement. I got this piston cup. But he realizes after he almost wins the cup, right, that it's just an empty little cup. It's only after he lets the other, I forget the name, the other racer kind of pass in front of him, that he becomes transformed. And he realizes that he's reached the pinnacle, right, of his journey, of his destination, of his true self. In these stories, I know I'm speaking esoterically here, but from your prospect perspective, that's what they want. They want to be on a journey. No one wants to be sold, they want to buy. So here's what I showed to Daryl and Jim the other day. This is a client that came to me a few months ago, and this is what they had on their literature. We sell communication software that improves latency, routing, delivery time. I asked them, tell me their benefit, give me their pitch. And this is what, and we could probably do the same thing for companies that we've worked with in the past, right? Sounds like any other enterprise ERP level, right? So we took that and created it to this. Today, if there's an unfortunate twist of fate in your life with a slip, a fall, a crash, or worse, your instincts will be to dial 9 1-1. This single action will put your fate in the hands of a Byzantine network of phone operators, private contractors, and public services. Good luck. Once you know how a 911 call is routed, you'll buckle up more often, wear better equipment for the sports you play, and generally live a more cautious life, etc., etc., etc. There's narrative there. There's tension in that story versus that. That's the what. This is the why. This is the hero's journey. And for us in 2020, for you guys, right, to get to where you want to be in 2020, you have to take your prospects on a hero's journey. Can't just sell them things, right? Sell them outcomes. Outcomes that gets them promoted, that gets teachers less time in the office, that has the teachers frantically not pacing up and down, waiting for their test to be printed, et cetera, right? So the outcomes is what we want to focus on. So over that. Okay, and this is where the tension, what's tension? Tension is real simple. Two dogs, one bone, right? There's a tension, there's a scarcity that you have. You guys are incredibly busy, as an example. You want to really install the print, on-demand print, security, etc. It's tough, I gotta get you in the queue. Again, we'll help you create the screenplays for this. I say screenplay versus script, because a screenplay is you're an actor on a Broadway play. And the screenplay would be why this needs to be done, when it needs to be done, to get it in the queue, right? Folks need to know there's an element of scarcity involved in order to pull the trigger on something. I think you're going to see some better results on that. And I'll close with this here real quick. So the typical way of selling in the past, it's all familiar to a lot of us. And a lot of us were taught this way. Hey, we have the best company because our product does X and these awesome things. It's going to get you these couple of smattering of benefits. And by the way, it's much better than the guys down the street. And we got 3 people to tell you to prove it. And so are you interested to buy? What do you think? Ready to go? How's that sound? Now, again, you'll make a couple of shekels selling this way. You'll do okay selling this way. But if you're really a commercial visitor, if you're really an evolution number 1 salesperson, right, you're not going to have any fun doing it. You're certainly not going to fall in love with the craft. You're going to do it because somebody tells you to do it or it's the right thing to do. But this isn't fun. And it's not fun because it's counterintuitive to the sequencing how you like your stories presented. So, what we propose and what will help screenplay for you is this new formula. Listen, today, if you're in the market for a managed service provider, you already know there are hundreds, thousands of different options on the market today. Introduce a little tension, right? Oh, this person's telling me a story. I can sit back. I'm in the hands of a professional. Well, this is a narrative. This is once upon a time. And people are triggered by that they can sit back and they know that you're going to educate them on something that perhaps they haven't seen with. And you're educating me on, hey, this is the problem in the world. There's a couple of pitfalls out there that you got to be aware of. In fact, there's only one way to do this if you really think about it the way that I think about it. And if you agree that things are changing, costs are getting higher, it's tougher to keep security, physical security concerns are a big dilemma, teachers are overworked and underpaid, student counts are going ever higher, technology is farther away from the classroom, whatever it is. If you already agree, then should we discuss our view? Okay? And that's simple. And that's not a hit you over the head type of, you need to buy this, I need to transfer you to Jim to buy. It's a very subtle, solution-oriented, consultative pitch. And that's what will help screenplay for you, okay? So, with that, let me just see one more thing here. I should have this teed up. By the way, let's put this in some of my presentations. So you guys all know the Muppets, right? Who would want to work for and being a puppeteer? Sounds like a dream job, working with kids, Sesame Street, the Muppet Show, everything else, right? Here's to prove that, and some of you, who's worked in here with more than 2 companies? How about more than 3 companies? Okay. Okay, so Jim, you work for more than three. Would you agree that there are jackasses in every company?
Yes.
There are, right. So take a look at the headline for this. This is not a mock Onion headline, by the way. Brian Henson, son of Jim Henson from the Muppets, spills tea. This was the Kermit actor Steve Whitmer, right, who was the typical archetypal voice of Kermit the Frog that we all know and love. And evidently he was the biggest asshole on earth. And so even Kermit has an exorbitant amount of destructive energy that can take down a whole office or a whole culture. So it's everywhere. And the prospects that we're talking to, they may be in the midst of that, the storm. And you're the calm before the storm, right? But I just think what I loved about VIA, certainly with meeting Daryl and knowing Jeremy and Frank, is that, you know, there's a buzzer on the door for a reason. You only let certain folks in, and that comes with kind of a reciprocity, a mutual obligation. That if we're only going to let a certain type of folk in, then what are we going to do to kind of back up the people that are already here? And what are we going to do to help kind of grow the vision that these Google David Goggins and Jesse Itzler, you'll see a lot of stories there. So that's just a taste, I think, of the profession that I love, and that has done great things for a lot of the people that I know, and certainly my family. The lesson from Jesse on the 40% is, I think that when you look at the 40% that we're at right now, and you look at what Mel's mantra, what his herald was, which is a treasure diving book like this is what Frank and Jeremy and Daryl probably going to produce for you next month at the kickoff of what does the Etosha look like, what does the Santa Margarita look like, and the goal of 2,500. Did you have a goal of 2,500 last year when you started? Or?
Just do as many as possible.
Just do as many, yeah. Just go work until I tell you to stop, right? And this element that Jeremy had mentioned about achievement versus transformation, like we talked about with the Cosmic Onic Cycle, I think is key. You guys do a hell of a lot of cases for as small of a team as you are. You certainly punch above your weight class much more than a traditional MSP would. And I think what you have is you have that grit of grace. You got the, you got your wingman on the wall here. So I always said that the best salesperson in the world was Jesus Christ, right? And he didn't sell everybody. And so you're not going to sell everybody. And he had a better product than you guys do. And so the Son of God himself probably had about a 40-45% close ratio, right? And you're kicking ass, right, Scott? You're kicking ass. If you're in sales and you're closing about 25 to 30, 32%, 30%, you're walking on water, almost
He just
literally.
closed all
But the guy that
people.
literally walked on water isn't that far ahead of you on a close ratio. So when you start thinking at from that perspective, that certain folks just aren't
It's like,
ready to buy,
Mike
then you
down.
start realizing that this is about your personal achievement versus a number on the board. And that can you get better in 2020 versus 2019 by following some of the tips here. So more to come. So with that, Frank, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Cory.